On the heels of such 80s comedies as The Breakfast Club, Weird Science, Pretty in Pink, one first-time feature film director named Phil Joanou, under the guidance of none other than Steven Spielberg, brought his feature film debut 3 O'Clock High to theaters. Columbus Day weekend, October 9th, 1987. It would be a film that people would disregard, perhaps ignore, due to its paltry weekend box office. But over time, the film 3 O'Clock High would build an audience so fervent that, even now, it remains one of the most underappreciated 80s films around. Tonight, this week, this month, whenever you're listening, we delve deep into 3 O'Clock High on this premiere episode of The Sidetrack. This is your host, Paul Davidson. Thanks for joining us here on our first premiere episode of The Sidetrack. If I've done my job correctly, I've made 3 O'Clock High sound like the Merchant Ivory of 80s comedies. That's, of course, what music can do for anything. But the film is, for me, one of the most enjoyable, funny, quirky, visually surprising films that I ever saw when I was growing up in the glorious decade of the 80s. And that's what the Sidetrack is all about. While this is the first premiere episode, and I will be walking you through 3 O'Clock High on a weekly or monthly basis, we'll be sitting down and listening to full-length feature commentaries from filmmakers, producers, writers, actors, fanatics, people who hold one particular film extremely close to their heart and can and have no trouble sitting down for 90 minutes and talking your ear off about how the film impacted them, the details they know about the film that you've never heard before, and how it impacted who they are professionally and personally in their lives. Again, these are, in each of our individual commentators, the Merchant Ivory of films. So, this week, we will start with 3 O'Clock High. Directed by Phil Joanou, 1987. There's lots to talk about, so we'll give you a count, and then we'll begin. How it'll work is this. 3 O'Clock High is available all over the place digitally. You can buy it on Blu-ray. It's as easy as going to the iTunes store or the Amazon Prime Video shop and buying, renting, and watching the film. We'll give you a count of 3, and then the feature-length commentary will begin. So cue up the movie, wait for the count, and then I'll be with you for 90 minutes talking about the Merchant Ivory comedy of the 1980s, 3 O'Clock High. Hope you enjoy. The beautiful world as seen by Universal Pictures. Here we are, 3 O'Clock High. Thanks for joining me. This is a movie that I saw when it came out, October 9th, 1987. It followed a lot of the 80s comedies. John Hughes was the master at the time, right? Between The Breakfast Club, between Pretty in Pink, between Weird Science. He was the man. But this was different. This had a darker tone to it. And one of the most important things, one of the most interesting things about this film, as you can see right here, first of all, say hello to Casey Siemaszko, who before this movie really wasn't, well, he's never been a leading man, but, you know, he did Back to the Future as one of the Biff's hoodlums, and, but this was his opportunity. So here we are, start of the day, rock music playing, Casey Siemaszko, Jerry Mitchell playing Jerry Mitchell. What's great about this film is how it's shot. Little do many people know, but Barry Sonnenfeld, yes, director Barry Sonnenfeld did the cinematography of 3 O'Clock High. Barry Sonnenfeld of Men in Black fame, among many other films. One of the most important things, one of the most striking things about this film is, in fact, the cinematography. The way that the camera moves in this movie is amazing. Richard Tyson, you may recall, the villain from Kindergarten Cop. Here he plays antagonist Buddy Revell, the criminal who comes to Jerry Mitchell's high school, who just wants to be left alone, and unfortunately comes in contact with a gung-ho school newspaper reporter played by Casey Simasco. The music here is Tambourine Dream. Tambourine Dream, the whole soundtrack of this movie. So here we are with the classic shot outside, from inside the laundry. It was the inside the washing machine shot was not pioneered here in 1987, but it was one of the most well used film approaches here. So this is where I learned how to dry your clothes in the microwave and cook a Pop-Tart at the same time. See, John Hughes may have really had an ear for teens in their dialogue, but never did he introduce the cooking of clothing and Pop-Tarts in a microwave at once. So the cast of the movie, quite an interesting cast. In addition to Casey, in addition to our evil antagonist, played by Richard Tyson. Some interesting cameos as well. You've got Paul Feig. Paul Feig, director of Ghostbusters. He cameos here as a hall monitor. We'll check him out when he shows up. Mitch Pileggi from our favorite X-Files. Here a little bit more buff as Duke, the security guard. There's the there is the license plate, the personalized license plate, which found its way in 80s films. Here we have a personalized license plate, Supermom. Not sure if folks know, but if you look at any John Hughes movie, so this could be a bit of Phil Joanou sweeting or lending homage to what John Hughes did. Many of the license plates in many of John Hughes movies are all personalized. From Weird Science, Ferris Bueller, everybody's got a personalized license plate. Breakfast Club. You may remember Brian the Nerd, his family's license plate says E = MC squared. So here we have personalized license plates. Some other folks in the movie, Yardley Smith, the voice of Lisa Simpson, plays a young cheerleader. Philip Baker Hall, who we all recall as the library detective in Seinfeld, and of course of many P.T. Anderson's movies. Here's Detective Mulvihill. We've got Jeffrey Tambor from Larry Sanders. Quite an interesting cast here in 1987. So something that's interesting is this was a movie that Spielberg was executive producer on. Spielberg kind of took Phil Joanou under his wing on this movie. And the story goes that once he saw the movie and saw that it was a bit darker, this is funny, lighting consultant. Barry Sonnenfeld gets a lighting consultant credit here on the movie. I don't know that we've ever seen that since. Perhaps Barry was a pioneer with the lighting consultant credit and then made sure that nobody else got one in the future. All right, we got Supermom. We've got, Aaron Spelling, one of the executive producers here. So Spelling left his name on. Spielberg took his name off. Apparently it was too dark for Spielberg. At the time in the 80s, he was doing movies like Inner Space and Goonies and Gremlins, and this movie just didn't land where he wanted it to. But to that point, Phil Joanou was somebody that he took under his wing. Before this, Phil Joanou had a short. That was it. Last Chance Dance was the film short that he had done. And this was his first opportunity to get in the feature game. Here we have the disapproving hot girl, love interest potential. But as we all know, for somebody like Jerry, that is not to be. No, perhaps the woman sitting right beside him in this swirling, spinning station wagon is going to be the woman for him, which we will find out. So Phil Joanou, before this, film shorts, he was doing a lot of music videos. In fact, he was shooting many of U2's music videos, which would prepare him for, on the heels of this movie, filming and directing Rattle and Hum in '88. Which he then later, if you did not know, filmed a movie called Entropy in '99 that was based on his own life and his experience filming Rattle and Hum. So here we are, the clock as a ongoing theme, the allegory of the clock, ticking clock of this movie. This movie is one large ticking clock. Here we have Lisa Simpson as a young woman and a cheerleader here at the high school. The high school that Jerry Mitchell will attempt to escape all day long. So it's great in this movie are just the expectations that they're setting up here. Who is this guy? This guy that's coming to their town. He's a psychotic. He's killed people. He's been arrested. It's setting us up for what I consider to be one of the most infamous teenage antagonists of the 80s. So this is fun. This is a fun opening. Again, the music is still taking us through this moment. Everybody from all different social spheres of the high school are talking about our guy. Brass knuckles. They do say, if you're reading a script, as I'm sure other people who will do commentaries for the sidetrack will tell you, don't call it out if it's not going to play a part later in the script. So here we are. Doesn't like being touched. Does he play football? No, thank God. He's got brass knuckles. Isn't this the guy that pulled the knife on his coach? That's him. So we're setting everything up, and he took a swing at one of his teachers, and here we are, Jerry Mitchell, manager of the school store. I wonder if this will ever come to pass. The school store. Here he is. Buddy Revell. In a world where students who have killed their teachers are simply shuffled into another school, where brass knuckles are simply another teenage accoutrement, Buddy Revell. Look at that. This was before our friend Jeffrey Tambor had to color his hair. Lush, dark brown hair. Yet again, screenwriters, $470. Insert shot of the money. Hope that will come into play later. Perhaps if somebody, a protagonist needs money for some reason, perhaps somewhere in the neighborhood of $400-ish, $70. Perhaps that money will come in handy at some point. Terrific indeed, Jeffrey Tambor. Terrific indeed. No, we're not going to have a party with that money, Bree. Let's make sure about that. So when this movie opened on 849 theaters on October 9th, 1987. And in its opening weekend, in the top 10 box office performers, 3 O'Clock High landed at number 9 out of the top 10. Now, this is something I talk about often if you know me. If you look back at the 80s and you look back at the movies that were all in theaters at the same time, it seems to me that there were quite a bit more of original films that are considered classics today that were performing at the box office. Check this out. Number one on the weekend of Columbus Day weekend, October 9th, 1987, Fatal Attraction came in with $10.5 million this weekend that this movie opened. Like Father, Like Son, maybe not a classic, but Kirk Cameron, Body Switching on the heels of Big, $6 million that weekend. The classic The Princess Bride had been playing for weeks, still jamming with $4.5 million this weekend. Someone to Watch Over Me, $2.9 million. Surrender, I believe that's a Tom Berenger movie, $2.2 million. Dirty Dancing, continuing to perform, $2 million. The Principal, $1.8 million. Stakeout, $1.6 million. Come on, Jerry. Jerry's having trouble opening the cash register, just like clearly the film had trouble opening that weekend at $1.5 million, ninth on the box office charts. It would only go on to actually generate $3.6 million from a budget of, can you guess? How much does this movie look like it cost? $5 million. That's it. Looks pretty good for $5 million. Here comes a great shot. Let's look at this list of students and assign somebody to mess with Buddy Revell. Big mistake. Jerry Mitchell. Oh, you know it's going to go bad. This is the catalyst of the movie. In fact, here we go. Where are we at in the movie? 14 minutes and 15 seconds. If you, again, are someone that's a screenwriter or has read about screenwriting or has read The Hero's Journey or know anything about structure, they tell you that by page 15, you better have that catalyst happening. And here we are, just shy of 15 pages. And this is the moment that will spin the movie's narrative into motion. Let's watch. Uh-oh. Don't touch him. Didn't you hear the stories? Don't touch him. It's a great shot. Here we go with the, I think, not the sped up, the cameras. Getting sped up here. Some interesting. This guy's great. This guy is so good. Yes, don't make him mad. Wonder what that's going to be. I love it. And the ticking clock begins. This next moment of the dude coming out of the bathroom stall is awesome. Just when you thought what just happened here would stay between the two of them. Oh shit. It's on. Dude, Casey Simasco is up. He's fucking amazing in this. And as he transitions, as he kind of transforms, as we'll watch that happen, it's great. Here we are, ticking clock. Love with his sweater, with the middle of his sweater, all crumpled up from where Buddy Revell picked him up and threw him up against the mirror. Why didn't Jerry Mitchell listen to what all of the setup was? I kind of buried the lead at the beginning of this episode, but for folks who don't know me and who I am, my background, of course, is in the film space. I ran the Orchard Film Group for a good amount of years here, from about 2014 to 19, where we had a few Oscar-nominated docs, like Cartel End and Life Animated, and released some movies that are classics today, much like this one, What We Do in the Shadows, and Hunt for the Wilder People with Taika Waititi, American Animals with Bart Layton. We worked with the Duplass brothers on movies like The Overnight, Patrick Brice's Creep, and Creep 2. Needless to say, that was quite an experience for me, because it was about going to festivals, finding those movies that moved you, and then finding an audience for them, which is not altogether too different than this, right? At the end of the day, we're surfacing movies that maybe you haven't seen, and telling you why we love him. So he doesn't want people knowing about him, Jerry. Okay. I had a year or two ago just to call out what kind of a fan base this movie has. I was having coffee with Ed Burns, who I'm sure you know as the director of movies like Brothers McMullen, and for some reason this movie came up. I think I was mentioning it, and he had just shown it to his son, and there is a contingency in Hollywood of people who love this film and would love to see it get remade. Now, speaking of that, that doesn't mean making a movie that is like it, but not the movie. Oh, here's the epitome of film wannabe students. These kids are going to UCLA Film School. Anyways, there was a movie in, if my notes are correct, 2017, movie called Fist Fight with Ice Cube and Charlie Day. That was very much this concept, but it was two teachers, one teacher challenging the other to a fight at the end of the day. But nobody, I'm not a huge proponent of remaking films that are classics. Like, we don't need Back to the Future remade. I don't know that we need to remake this movie. It feels pretty perfect as far as I'm concerned. So it's just a matter of resurfacing it and having people experience it. And thankfully, this movie's on Blu-ray. This movie's digitally available all over the place. So it's nice to settle in with your snack of choice and experience this movie as it was intended to be seen. Now she's fascinated. But isn't that the case in general? When anyone, a man or a woman, puts themselves in the line of danger, risks their life for a cause, suddenly we're all much more attractive than we once were. This is great. The allegory of Jerry Mitchell watching insects being destroyed by their predators. Everybody's got a plan in this movie. A plan that never quite works out the way they expected. I don't know what happened to Jerry's friend here. I should probably know his name, but I don't. But he reminds me a bit of Patrick Dempsey's friend in Can't Buy Me Love, which is another, if I had a double feature, I'd put that one on the list. That is also not dark like this movie, but a classic that still stands up there. I joke with friends, there is a scene in Can't Buy Me Love where Patrick Dempsey's character stands up and makes a speech in the lunch area to defend his friend Kenneth from the jocks. And we worked with Patrick Dempsey on a documentary back in the day, and every time I saw him, I wanted to get him to restate the monologue so I could get it on camera, because it's a moment, that's for sure. And you're screwed. I will say the screenplay for this movie, I think, is pretty tight. They do a great job planting the seeds. Everything that we spend any time on matters and will play a part. Everything that we've heard about Buddy Revell, everything you've seen happen to this point with the knife, with the combination, with the money, it all plays a part. And I love the consistency, just from like a timeline perspective. These shots are really interesting to me. I'm not a cameraman, so I don't know. Are they cranking the film faster to get this effect? Somebody smarter than me will probably chime in and tell me how exactly it is that they do that these days. Who knows? But I like the kind of sped up, frenetic feel that they've got going. He's great with his just shell-shocked perspective, shell-shocked emotion that's happening in this first half hour of the movie. Which again, look, is Casey Robert De Niro? No, he's not Robert De Niro. I would dare to say that the quality of his acting in this is as good or better than a lot of the teen performances we saw in a lot of these 80s comedies. His range is good, I think. There's a bit of creating a surreal feel to this movie, and a lot of it. I mean, this is great too. This is all from his perspective, kind of turning up this reality. What is the reality here? I mean, it feels. Jerry feels this. He feels like this is what's going to happen to him. The way that this is shot, the horror on his face, the lighting. It's just great. Like, it's a great example of, it's so much about the performance, because you could read this, but the way that he reacts, here he comes about to eat it. Words are one thing. Like his character has said absolutely or almost absolutely nothing in the last 5 minutes. It's all in his performance. It's all in his face. It's partly comical that I feel silly, lauding. Oh, who's that? Those boots are familiar. There's a great line coming up I remember to this day. I think it's film is permanent, blood is not. Pain is temporary, film is forever. That's a great line. Well, listen, if you were this dude, what would you do? You'd leave campus. It's the easiest way out, right? He's got a car, he's got a key. What could happen? There's that knife. I mean, if I was me and I saw that, I'd be out of there. All right, so the car's not working. Easy fix, right? The logic makes sense, right? So just get off campus. That's it. Just get out of there. It's awesome. Look at Mitch Pileggi. I feel like he was this buff dude, and then he shows up years later in the X-Files. He's a bit of a buff dude here. This is great. He's just, it's like you've got a dude who has never done anything wrong in his life, and now just to escape this fight, everything, all this shit is coming down at him. And what has he got in his pocket? I mean, it just keeps getting worse. Of course, the wind flies it away. This was shot in, I want to say, it was shot in Los Angeles. It was shot in California. I think it was slightly north of LA. This is all here. They didn't have to go anywhere else, really, other than the neighborhood. Of this dude's name, Wojtek. The production designer of this movie should also be given some major props for what you're about to see. There's no escaping the Duker. Look, I'm not saying that every one of these characters is, written like, they were written by Shakespeare. But they've all got their moments. Wojtek Dolinsky. It all makes perfect sense. I love the names behind them. All the people that are on the disciplinary list. It's a little like the German Edie McClurg from Ferris Bueller. I think that's part of the reason why people discounted the movie. I think, it felt like it wasn't a John Hughes movie, but that wasn't the intention. It reminds me of my years in high school. I did nothing of consequence for the first 3 years and didn't cause any trouble, and then used my fourth year I got away with a ton because nobody expected me, and I didn't go to this high school, where clearly, if you've had 3 great years, that fourth year, you just take a misstep, and you're screwed. See, the choreography of the narrative beats of this movie, I think it's like it's like, again, I'm, for somebody who's like comparing this to, Parasite or something that's super critically acclaimed. I mean, this is 67% on Rotten Tomatoes. But when you're, when you're in the industry and you read scripts day and night and see what's being put out there, and the holes and the narrative missteps, this movie, it all works. The beats work. You can say that the moments are silly, hyper realized, but they work. Everything works, and that's what audiences want. They know when something doesn't feel right. They don't know how to vocalize it or verbalize it. They may say that the movie just didn't keep their attention. That's where the narrative goes off the tracks, where you're throwing them down one direction and those details never play a part later in the movie. That's where this movie does not do that. Neither does Back to the Future. Neither does Witness with Harrison Ford. There are a small handful of screenplays that do it. All right, Craig Maddie. Let's see, where are we in the narrative here? We are about 38 minutes in. Clearly, I love talking about structure. Structure is something, as someone myself who has written, which, by the way, again, for those who don't know, I've published a few books over my time, Consumer Joe, The Lost Blogs, and written and sold feature here or there, TV pilots here or there. So I'm definitely very focused on structure, and I'm not a structure. There are people who say, this must happen by this page. I don't think of it that way. I think there's a feel, and a timing that it's an organic thing that you don't write a script where something has to happen on a certain page. But if something, you don't have a feel for it by a certain point, like as we're approaching the middle of a movie, a middle of any story, you want your main characters to feel like they're at their lowest point, right? The midpoint. So here we are in a 90-minute movie, and we're approaching that midpoint right now. So he's had those complications. He's tried to get out of school. It hasn't happened. Now he's about to try to make a deal with the devil, and we'll see where that all goes wrong. I feel like when I speak about structure, I should speak in an English accent. It would make it sound even more believable. I love this dude, his friend. That dude was probably paid $150 to stand there. Where is that dude now? I got to keep my eyes open for Paul Feig. Just $450. Where could that be? Once again, there's that little matter of $477. that our buddy, that our Jerry Mitchell has access to. And again, this has been set up for us earlier when the popular girl in school couldn't get her change. And that's what I love. I love these moments. I mean, in any movie, right, where something seems innocuous only to become a very significant plot point. I mean, the fact that he can't get this thing open is going to have a ripple effect that you'll see if this is the first time you're watching this movie. This was a PG-13 movie when it came out. I don't know if folks remember the history of the PG-13 rating, but it was Spielberg's Temple of Doom. That was the reason for the creation of the PG-13 rating, because that movie was not could not be delivered under PG. There were elements of it that the MPAA could not stomach at a PG rating. And despite the fact that PG-13 was created for Temple of Doom, a little piece of trivia for you: the first movie to use the PG-13 rating was none other than, do you know? Bueller? No, it wasn't Ferris Bueller. It was Red Dawn. First PG-13 rating. It's interesting if you look back at the movies of the 80s. You look at something like 16 Candles, which was PG and had full frontal nudity as a PG movie. So it's we were clearly less concerned back then. On our way through history to becoming more PC, I guess. What's it going to do with the other 27? So we're literally exactly at the midpoint of this movie. We've been through 44 minutes. We've got 45 to go. And the midpoint is about to, the lowest point for Jerry Mitchell is about to happen. Somebody was reading a screenwriting structure book when they wrote this movie. Here we go, the details of the clock. It's interesting, if you bought this movie on iTunes, as I did, it lists it in its metadata as a drama from 2002, which is incorrect. This is a, well, maybe you'd say it's a drama. I don't think so. I read this as a comedy. And it's 80, what did I say? 87. What a year 87 was. I love it. There's a great moment where Jeffrey Tambor lets his emotions come out. How horrible this has been. Someone could do something so horrible. And again, Casey here. It's a masterclass. Why was Casey never on the Actors Studio before the host passed on? Casey was in Stand By Me. He was in Back to the Future. Was, he was a supporting role. Here it comes. Oh, there it is. His Oscar performance. A burgeoning cancerous Festering growth in the colon. Some good writing. 12:15. We've got less than 3 hours. What you're about to see here is an amazing bit of choreography with set dressing. What's he reading? Of Mice and Men. More allegory. Don't touch him. Look at this. I love the statue. Boom. That's awesome. So great. This is such a good movie. So good. How obsessed am I with this movie? Well, let me tell you. I have the original Tangerine Dream vinyl soundtrack. I have the original film spool of the movie trailer that was played in theaters. I have the original publicity packet. Back in the day, before all this digital, they'd send out an envelope packet filled with photos, still photos from the movie. The kind of thing that we don't get still photos anymore. You go into a screening, publicity screening, and these days you'll get, a printout of interviews with the cast and with the filmmakers and their intentions in the film, background on the story, some of those things that journalists can pull from to write articles. But no, I have the original press packet. I have the VHS tape. I have the Blu-ray. I have the digital copy. I have the framed poster. I'm clearly, what would you call an obsessive 3 o'clock high fan? I mean, the Twilight folks have their own. Trekkies have their own. I just don't think 3 o'clock high has gotten there. Years ago, Seth Green, I think, showed this film as a part of some film festival that he had founded, singing its praises, which is nice. I'll tell you, as a child of the 80s, one of the greatest things, one of the greatest fringe benefits that came with working in the industry was having those run-ins with the folks that I grew up watching. One of my first gigs in Hollywood was working at New Line Cinema, and I remember Pauly Shore walking in the front door past my desk, and I was literally 3 weeks out of college, and that was amazing to be able to sit and talk to the Leah Thompsons or the Patrick Dempseys, the Joe Dantes, the Ed Burns. Like, it's fun. Never met Casey, though. Never met Phil Joanou, who's now doing a lot of commercials. He kind of had that run of films, and then got out of it, got back into the game. He did. Let's see, his first movie, first feature film was this. Then he did Rattle and Hum in '88, State of Grace in 1990, Final Analysis in '92. Like State of Grace and Final Analysis were two like thrillers, adult thrillers. I think Final Analysis had Richard Gere. So he kind of segued into those, and then Entropy in '99 with Stephen Dorff playing himself. And then after that, it was mostly commercials. And that's what he's doing today. You can find him at, I think it's philjoanou.com. See what he's been doing. So here we are at the midpoint. Everything's gone to shit. And his sister has given him one piece of salient advice. Get kicked out of class. Do whatever you can. And so, who we know Jerry Mitchell to be at this point is about to get turned upside down in quite an amusing way. In a world where Jerry Mitchell is not himself, one man will challenge what people think he is by becoming someone else entirely. Again, this scene is operating on multiple levels of fun detail. We know he's going to do something crazy, but we expect he'll get kicked out. Let's see. I know that dude. He went to my high school. A version of him. The Oxford dude in the Oxford sweatshirt. His laugh coming up is great. It's so fun. This reminds me of Risky Business a little. Who I believe Tangerine Dream also did music for. Remember that scene on the train with Rebecca De Mornay and Tom Cruise? This is also Tangerine Dream. Here they come. If memory serves. It's so Risky Business. And we'd expect at this point that Jerry Mitchell would be kicked out of school. That's Nurse Palmer, by the way. Now, Jerry Mitchell's a bit of a legend. We're starting to be. What's the moral of this story? Is it that when you take chances, the world is your oyster? When you step out from who you are and challenge yourself, that perhaps surprising things may happen? Is it that you don't touch strangers? In this day and age, man, we're living in a world where you don't get near anybody, right? That's one of the interesting things these days as we live in this current, not even post-COVID world, but the current COVID world, is watching these movies from a different time. You could even watch something that was shot from last year and say to yourself, why are these people hugging? These people are eating in restaurants. They're too close. It's a bit of a, feels like we've lost something. Don't want to take it, bring anyone down here. We're watching a comedy, but it's like a time capsule. I think the casting of this particular young woman in this role, she was in a bunch of different 80s movies, and I'm spacing on which ones. But I always felt that I wouldn't have cast her. She's the one role in this movie that I feel like doesn't 100% fit for me. And it's not a, I think maybe, I don't know. I think it's how they've dressed her kind of like this mod, kind of outcast. And Jerry's a bit of an outcast too, but I just never felt like it was the right match, these two. If I ever talk to Phil, I'll ask Phil what was your thinking on this, Phil? Same goes for Annie Ryan, who plays the young woman who just invited Jerry to her party. She kind of came and went, as far as I know. She's a bit, her character. Here I am pulling it apart at the seams. She's fine. She's fine. This is Casey's his world. Like someone famous once said, and I believe it was Seth Rogen on the Howard Stern show at one point, it's amazing that any movie is ever good, because the amount of details, the amount of things that have to come into play, that have to work together, there's a lot of them. Just because the script is great, oh, here we are, Phil Baker Hall. Now the cops are being brought in. They are continuing, like they say in the world of screenwriting, you are the god as the writer, and you are continuing to throw stuff at your characters to give them no way out, so that they have to challenge themselves. They've got to challenge who they are. They've got to step out of the norm, or else they will not overcome what they're facing, which is exactly what's happening here. If I was him at this moment, a lot of his choices make sense. And here we are about an hour away from D-Day. He's tried everything. He's feeling, he's not beat up yet, but he's feeling it. It's a great shot. What the hell is he going to do? Anyways, what I was saying was I got carried away, is that, Seth Rogen said this, the script may be great, but if the director sucks, the movie won't work. If the director's great, but the actors, look at Eric Stoltz in Back to the Future. The script was great. The director was solid. They had a great cast. Eric Stoltz just couldn't land the comedy. So they had to go with Michael J. Fox, which was, let's be honest, the best thing for that movie, right? But it's amazing that any movie turns out good. Editing, down to music. If any of those things seem off, you're screwed. People can smell it. Here we are, last class before 3 o'clock, and his nemesis is sitting right next to him. Man, Richard Tyson's great with that just annoyed look on his face. 45 minutes, not even 45 now. Here we are 25 minutes out. Maybe this is the way out. I should do narration for audiences that can't actually see the movie. I could just tell you everything that's a job. I could just tell you everything that's happening. All right, so Jerry, he looks down, he's sliding his paper over. All the answers are there. Close your eyes for a second. Let's see how this works. He's letting Buddy Revell copy his page. He's continuing to do his work. Buddy's copying him. And they're caught. You can open your eyes now. Mr. O'Rourke. This guy's great. He's got a great line coming later in the movie. It's interesting when you look back at the release pattern of this movie. 850 screens in October 1987. Back then there were not 4,000 screens as there up until COVID this year. 4,000 plus screens, multiplexes. 850 screens. But that's how they did it back in the day when you didn't have all the streaming services and you had, your 3 networks on television. You didn't have 1,000 channels to choose from. There were no cell phones. People, you could put a movie on 800 screens and let it play for all summer long. It's amazing how, in just a handful of decades, how quickly all of that has changed. But the one thing that hasn't changed is, those opening weekend numbers. Even today, where movies are, playing in drive-in theaters, it's still, if you can call out that your movie played on 500 screens and had the highest per screen average, then there's a story to tell. This movie did not have that story to tell. This to me is this moment where everything you thought you knew about Buddy is flipped on its head. He needed to copy from Jerry. He clearly didn't know how to do it. This is like Good Will Hunting V1. This movie still looks really good. Z equals 2/3. It's right. He's right. Holy shit. He knew the answers all along. Can I go now? Fucking Jerry Mitchell. This dude is screwing with Jerry Mitchell. It's one thing you don't... What's the one... Is there a flaw? The flaw that he... need to know more about Buddy Revell. Yes. And you just fucked it all up. Oh, yeah, that. Oh, Jerry Mitchell. Oh, no, it's not. O'Rourke. Let's see that clock. Where are we at? What's the time? The last shot at desperation. Hmm. This is a great second act turning point. It's all going to go away. That easy. This is a great speech coming up from Richard Tyson. Here we go. Brutal. You didn't even try, Jerry. You didn't even try. Great shot. I don't think that those are the windows, the light of the windows. They had to have been shown from above. So here's the requisite moment of self-reflection. This is clearly middle of California somewhere. Maybe Riverside. The world is so big up there, Jerry. Your time on this earth, so short. And you just didn't even try. Why? Why didn't you try? It's this moment we all faced in our lives, right? Don't want to be a pussy, right? Here we go. Have some balls, Jerry. This is good. Good music, good score. Oh, shit. This is a great moment. I think this was a trailer moment. Yeah. Here we go. Clock ticking. If you look at the, if you're watching like I am with subtitles, that just appears on screen. Clock ticking. It's very apropos. Flunk me. I clearly know. I could probably, if I had a gun to my head and they told me to write the script, I probably could write a pretty decent version, pretty close to what was here just by memory. Here they are. We heard about those in the first 5 minutes of the movie. The brass knuckles. It's very well edited. I really would love to get a chance. I did reach out to Phil to talk about this. If by the time you listen to this, there's actually some dialogue back and forth with Phil, then you know I followed through and made it happen. There's the consistency of those cracks in the mirror. Jerry is like a fighter, and here it comes, a climax of our film. For a first movie, I gotta say, Phil Joanou did a great job. I don't know the history on the script and where it was floating around, how long it was out there for, how much work Phil did on it, doing a director's pass. It's a great location, though. They got all these kids hanging out the windows. The circle between all of the cars. The hair on these people. 80s hair, feathered hair. See, there's really nothing. The question is today, if this movie were to happen, with all the technology, how would this change? Cell phones. I mean, if you still have a closed campus, what would happen? I think it holds up pretty well, even with the technology. Here we are. Here's Rourke. Is it going to be a fight today? Here, everything they say happens in beats of 3. Here's the third beat of the touching. Even the same shot. Oh. I think it's the third beat. It's a screenwriting thing. Everything is in 3 beats. First time you set it up. Second time you remind the audience. The third time is the payoff. So think about that. The first time sets everything in motion. It's the catalyst. What was the second time? No, the first time was the mention of it. The second time was the catalyst. And then the third time is that surprising moment with O'Rourke getting knocked out by Buddy. I love this shot with his hand. I wonder if that's even his hand. Or are they just casts? Looking for someone with a big hand. One day of work. Oof. What's fun is how everybody in Jerry's circle or sphere, they give him a hand here. O'Rourke, his quote-unquote girlfriend. Who else is left? Oh, here comes here comes our friend, Mitch Pileggi. Another touch. Another one out. That dude is out. And Jerry comes into his own. That's right, there's the bet. Oh, good shot. Wait, I can actually make this guy bleed. I love this. The way that they shoot that makes it look like he literally swings. He throws his fist at him. Good makeup here, and here comes, again, the third beat on these brass knuckles mentioned in the beginning. Show him put it on by his locker, and the third beat is the payoff. I hate to sound so jaded and deconstructing a movie with all of these things, but it's a feeling. You know, people can read a script, and if that catalyst doesn't happen for 45 pages, they're sitting around reading, wondering when they're going to know what the movie's about. So that's what's going on. Oh, here comes another friend. Just enough time for Jerry and his own Guardians of the Galaxy to come together. Here we go. I'm going to let you experience this. O'Rourke. There you go. I love this look on Richard Tyson's face, like, what? How is this possible? Kind of a smile, kind of a surprising smile as he goes down for the count, and he's out. Satisfying, right? The only thing that feels off to me is this moment. I don't know. I don't buy that one moment. I didn't feel the two of them get there at any point. Here we are with our police captain. I'm just realizing as we watch this whole thing, where was Paul Feig? You got to go back and find him. This is also a great example of, well, the Mitchell boy is gone, right? With like four minutes left to the movie, how are they going to wrap this thing all up? This is a nice moment. We know what's happening here. There's a kid here that I think I went to high school with. This dude. I think he went to my high school. This is a nice way for the population of the school to give back to Jerry for all he did. It's a nice arc for Jerry. Although if you were being a stickler on the details, you might say, well, sure, he got the $477 back, but what are the police going to say? There's still the matter of who messed up the whole store, but that's for the sticklers. For everybody else who just enjoyed Buddy getting his ass kicked by Jerry, well, you can get over it. Love the parting of the students here. Very subtle smile here from Mr. Tyson. That's acting, right? I could not act. Requires a certain something that I don't possess. Tying up all these loose ends. It's a silly movie, okay? Like I said, it's not the Merchant Ivory of anything, but it's just a fun, amusing film. Well written, narrative beats tie up nicely, nice journey for Jerry. A little bit of that wish fulfillment, wanting to stand up for something, being brave. And isn't that what any of us really want? Just escapism at the end of the day. This is a great tag on the end. Just how these stories at high schools, stories in general in life, take on it's the game of telephone, right? Take on a bit more than actually was the reality of the situation. Yeah, hall monitor, Paul Feig. I have to go back and watch that. That's the one learning for me this time around. Now there's literally nothing left to learn. Yardley Smith bringing up the rear. Bookending this movie. Well, there you go. "3 O'Clock High," October 9th, 1987. Start and end on the clock. And all is better in Cherry Mitchell's world. From one Merchant Ivory-esque comedy film from the 80s to an award-winning drama next week to a foreign film the week after, who knows what will be next on the sidetrack. But what I can tell you is this. On a somewhat regular basis, call it bi-weekly or weekly, filmmakers, actors, writers, directors, producers, they'll be coming to the table with their feature-length commentary, giving you some insight into why that movie was so impactful for them, perhaps a little bit of their experience working in the industry, and a little bit about themselves. So if you like the sidetrack, please share it with people out there, let them know, get them to subscribe on Apple, iTunes podcasts, and your favorite podcast service near you. This is Paul Davidson from The Sidetrack, saying thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.